Welcome back to Mass Appeal. You might not think so, but composting is easy and it can save you a whole lot of cash. Marion Golston from the Center for Eco-Technology is here with tips to help us compost. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Definitely.
It's easier than we think?
It is definitely easier. And the link right now with February and Valentine's Day is that people love their gardens, and they're starting to think about it right now. They're starting to put their seed orders in, and the thing to do also right now is start to think about your composting system.
Why is it that composting is so good for your garden?
Because the basic thing to always remember is that compost happens. It happens easily, and it's a great source of sort of soil amendment that you can put in and sort of makes your flowers that much nicer, makes your vegetables that much stronger and tastier. And so creating your own compost at home is really easy. It also is really important for our environment and for our landfills. Right now, with people putting the food scraps just straight into the trash, when they put it into the landfill, it creates methane. Also, a lot of communities around here have pay-as-you-throw, and so that's when you actually have to pay for your trash to be taken, and that means you're going to be adding all this extra weight into your trash bags and having to pay for that. And so if you don't do that and instead you compost it, then you save money.
Well, it's funny, my wife and I, new house, we got a garbage disposal. So we've been taking a lot of our food and putting it in the garbage disposal, which is, you know, it's the next step. It's not composting, which is what we should do, which hopefully we'll start doing with your help in the spring. But you're right, we have a pay-as-you-go system in the town that I live in, and it adds up, you know, every little piece of food waste. So this is how we get started. What does one need to begin composting?
So the first most abundant thing in our area is leaves. We have lots of leaves. A lot of people try to throw away the leaves, they try to get rid of the leaves, but actually if you're composting leaves, you can actually store and they become a really important part of your composting. And so both in the fall but also in the spring when you do that sort of final yard cleanup to get it back to living shape in the new year, take all that composting and put it in a location in some sort of pile around and keep that throughout the summer, then mix into your compost.
So don't ditch it, keep up with it.
Definitely, and that's number one main ingredient. But actually, back up to the main basics about composting, there's sort of four main things that you need for composting. So you need heat, so it stays nice and warm and actually works. You need air, so it needs to sort of that oxidation to happen. You need water, and so that needs to sort of keep it moist so that the bugs and everything in there really work well. And then actually you need your ingredients. And then what actually does all the work, and again I like to say compost happens. You don't have to do anything extra. So you've got all the natural microorganisms, you got the bugs, the worms, they come in and do the composting and all the hard work for you. You just have to sort of mix in the extra ingredients every once in a while.
And there's a little bit of a ratio. So we start off with this kind of ingredients, and there's also food waste. So how much of this, portion-wise, do we need?
Roughly you want about 3 to 1. And you know, there's people get really into the science stuff. I think it's, again, with the idea that just compost happens, roughly you throw in a bunch of this, you throw a little bit of food greens in, as we'll call them, but these are the browns, and they, you know, leaves, straw. If you're running out, like you didn't collect enough leaves last year, you can throw in newspaper, you can throw paper bags, cardboard, tear up, rolls from your toilet paper, all those things can be thrown in, mixed together with just quick little mixing every once in a while, and it sort of keeps all the browns and then goes in with your greens.
Okay, so we have the browns and then the greens. Now, what is involved in the greens?
So the greens is everything from your, you know, if you cut your grass and you collect that, that's a green. If you've got a garden and you pull off live pieces of the plants, that's a green. Or the stuff that comes out of our kitchen is most often always greens. So you've got, you know, peelings, you've got leftover vegetables from the outer layers, things like that. You can just throw that in. This is a kitchen composter, which is sort of like have this right on your kitchen, on your counter. You can throw stuff in there and then take it outside to your composter outside.
Oh, so it's like a perfect intermediate step, because I bet a lot of people are watching and they're saying, well, what am I going to do with all my, I'm not going to take it outside to my composter every single time.
Right.
So this is a great intermediate step.
Yep. And then the one secret ingredient, I think the one ingredient that does, you don't have to have it, but it certainly does that much better, is this right here. Coffee grounds. The microorganisms and worms love coffee grounds. So if you have your grounds, composting that just makes it that much better. It gives you that much richer compost at the end. So really don't throw away that. Tea bags, the same thing. Mix that into your compost and throw it outside when you get ready for it each day.
So this is another one of those things that you can put in here and then take it out every few days when you need to.
Exactly.
What shouldn't we compost?
Right. So there's a couple things that if you, at the industrial level composting, it works. Everything gets broken down. But at your home composting level, your pile doesn't really get that hot that you don't want to put in meats, you don't want to put in oils or grease, you don't want to put dairy products. Those are the main things out of your kitchen that you don't want to mix in there, because it's not going to get that hot to burn through it. Plus, it's more likely to bring the pests. And so then that's the main thing from inside. From outside, the thing that you really don't want to mix in are things like if you have a plant that dies and it's got issues and you don't want to then throw that into your compost, because that's going to be mixing in whatever disease it might have had.
So sickly plants.
Yeah, sickly plants. Awesome. The other thing that people sometimes forget about is seeds from other plants, particularly like if you have grass seeds or stuff like that. If you mix that into your compost, when you spread your compost, you're going to be possibly spreading those seeds.
Very good point.
Some of them get sort of eaten up and digested through the process, but one of the things that's always really funny is tomato seeds is one of those things that will not get composted. And so if you spread that out over places, you're going to start to see little tomato plants popping up all over the place.
You don't want that.
So you don't want that. So try not to put tomato plants in there, the actual tomato itself, because that's going to sort of propagate the seeds.
Marin, these are great tips, and a little bit later in the show we're going to talk about, so we've got all this stuff, how the heck are we going to make some structures that actually hold it? It's a pleasure to have you here, so don't go anywhere. A little bit later, we're going to finish this up. Welcome back to Mass Appeal. We're back with Marin from CET, the Center for Ecotechnology. We've been talking about how to compost, but now people have the idea, they love it, they want to do it, but there's certain siting considerations, so you can figure out where's the best place to put it in your home.
Right. And so one of the first things to consider is convenience. If you put it at the farthest back into your yard, are you really going to get out there to take your compost out? Possibly not, especially not in the wintertime. Even more, that's going to become an issue, right? So you want to make sure that you place it with a convenient place. Second, you want to think about your neighbors, right? Some neighbors are going to be okay with the compost near them. Some neighbors are going to be really upset by it.
Is there a smell that comes with it?
It doesn't have to be. If you do the right ratio of the browns and the greens, as we were talking before, that can actually, and moisture and air, those are the main things that are going to deal with. If it starts to go anaerobic, not getting enough oxygen, that can start to have smell, or if it starts to have the wrong balance of carbon, which is the browns, and nitrogen, which is the greens, that can start to create more of the ammonia smell.
But if people do it right, fear not neighbors, everything will be okay.
And just, that's where I go in. I'm not a scientific composter. I'll go in and just sort of mix it up with a rake and just sort of stir it up a little bit. And if it's got a little smell, I'll throw extra browns on it. Usually that's enough to dampen it back down. And that stirring up also makes it better, deals with the air issue.
More aerated, because that's one of the 4 elements. And the last one's water, is that right?
Yeah, so you want to make sure that you want the heat. So that's where when you actually build your thing, it's the best heat is going to happen if you've got more like a 3x3 cubic space of compost happening. So sometimes you're going to start with smaller than that, but if you grow up to that size, that's going to get your ideal heat. But also, if you get it with good sun exposure, that's also going to make sure that it's cooking well too, because that's going to bring the right microorganisms and worms into it if it's got a nice warm temperature to it.
So there's a lot to consider, but there's a few different types that you can do, and we have some pictures.
Yep.
And it's important that we get the right one. So you sell a few. And let's take us through the first picture. What is this one?
Yep, so this is called the Earth Machine. It's sort of the main one that you see. A lot of towns actually have these on sale for reduced prices for their residents. But this is a really good one. That black plastic is going to draw the heat in too, so that you just put stuff on top, you throw it in, and it actually does the process itself. One of the other things that's important with these things is by having the ground exposed to the ground, you want to have the base of your composter open, and that's going to allow those microorganisms to come up. Because again, compost happens naturally, so you don't want to block out those microorganisms. So whatever you do, you want to make sure that the bottom is open up to them to come into it.
And now we have another type.
Yep, so, well, this is the end result. Once you've actually done all the composting, you get this sort of nice fertile soil afterwards, and this is sort of the soil amendment that you can add to your plants, flowers, garden, whatever. And then some of the other different types, you can make them yourself. So you can use a chicken wire, and just like a round chicken wire, and throw things in.
Right now?
Yep.
That might not be the best looking one, but it just gets the job done just as well.
Just as dull, exactly. And so that you sort of throw stuff on top, and then you can sort of take a rake in and stir it up every once in a while is a good thing. And then the pallets. So there's other people use pallets. They just sort of add the 3 sides. The nice one about this too is it's got a 2 different sort of area. So that can be a space. The second one, you can store all those extra leaves that you rake in the fall.
Because I was thinking about that. Inevitably, you'd have more browns than you do the greens because you're doing all the raking. You get getting all your hay for the hay rides and the kids. So you have all of this stuff.
Right.
So yeah,
you want to store it over winter time. And then this is a barrel, so this is another type that you can throw stuff in, and you can turn it automatically just by easily just turning the crank on the wheel, and it just sort of mixes it all up and does that well.
So it aerates it just a little bit better.
Yeah.
Well, there's so many options, and we're looking at that soil in those people's hands, and that's the thing. When you're starting a garden, I know if there's garden aficionados out there, that's not cheap. Getting all that, if you're doing manure or fertilizer, it adds up.
It definitely
So if you can have some that you don't have to pay for, it's great, and it's local, and you've saved money on, you don't have to put in the trash.
Right. Right, yeah, so all those different steps along the way, you can save money, and it really does. It makes your flowers pop better, it makes your vegetables taste that much better. Plus, it's, it really, composting happens naturally, and you just have to put a little bit of effort into it, a little bit of foresight and thinking into it, and then you can have a great product that's going to help your garden that much nicer.
Marin, it's Love Week on Mass Appeal, and I know a lot of people out there, they love their garden. So thank you so much for coming in and showing us how we can make ours a little bit better. If you want a copy of these composting tips, just head to our website later today.